On this episode, we visit Fort Bragg, California, where trails and parks follow the coast. The Community Development Advisory Board guides downtown streetscape improvements. Finally, an old lumber mill site provides an incredible redevelopment opportunity. Stay tuned. We're talking with Dan Jurdy, who's on the Fort Bragg, California City Council. What's this bridge behind us?
Well, this is a bicycle and pedestrian bridge that's owned by State of California State Parks, and it was rebuilt after about a 10-year planning process and pushed by our city council and our local state senator, Wesley Chesbrough. And we were eventually able to get State Parks to rebuild this wooden trestle. It's about a 1912 wooden structure that was virtually rebuilt from scratch. So as you can see, it's a 16-foot wide structure. One little hiccup at the end is, although State Parks did not tell us that they were doing this, they actually made the trestle and the decking of it just 8 feet wide. And so we're hoping at some point in the future, when the untreated wood that was used for the structure rots away, that they rebuild it at that point at its full width. So the decking is 16 feet wide, giving more room for bicyclists and pedestrians to pass each other without having user conflicts. But it's a really important entry point into Fort Bragg because there's 3 miles of a 16-foot wide pedestrian road surface. It's an old logging road north of here on McCarricker State Park, and it enters into the northern part of our town. And so we're hoping that this trail will actually extend further south for another 3.5 miles until you get to the Noyo Bridge, which is crosses the other river that's in our town at the south end of town. And this is sort of the entryway in from the town into the McCarricker State Park, and from the north end of the community into the core of our town. And immediately to the south of here, we're planning to build, at least what I hope was an 8-foot bike lane, 4 feet each direction, and then a separate 8-foot pedestrian lane, so that the users don't have user conflicts. And that would continue south in another half a mile on existing right-of-way, and then for another 3 miles integrated throughout our specific plan that we'll be developing for the former mill site.
And you say this deck on this is only 8 feet wide. What would be the standard width for sort of the standard minimum width for a pedestrian bicycle bridge?
The standard width would be 12 feet, and that's because the minimum width for a pedestrian a Class 1 multi-use trail is 8 feet wide, and that's the minimum. And then you have to add 2 feet of shy distance on either side of that when you have vertical objects, such as a railing. And so that's where you get the minimum of 12 feet, and that's standards for AASHTO, which is the Engineers Association, as well as here in California. The state of California's own manual for uniform traffic control devices also says a minimum of 12 feet. But for whatever reason, State Parks ignored the rules and just went ahead and made it 8 feet wide.
But the structure itself is 16 foot, so you could do a little more than just the minimum and have a 16-foot bridge to match the 16-foot trail on the other side then.
That's what we're hoping, yeah. Yeah, so over time we hope to accomplish that, and in the near term we're hoping to build this trail to the south to continue this trail into our town.
So what's this park we're in now?
This is a park. It's a city park. It's called Pomo Bluffs Park. It's 25 acres, and it's extending the California Coastal Trail by 1/2 mile, and it's at the south end of our city. It runs west from Highway 1. Off of the Noyo River Bridge.
How'd this park come into being?
Well, Caltrans, which is the California Department of Transportation, was proposing to build a new bridge to replace the existing bridge. It was an old 1948 steel bridge. They were replacing it with that 2-lane bridge with a 4-lane concrete bridge. And at the time, they were proposing to put in a concrete railing on either side of the bridge, which would have blocked almost all coastal views in the railing zone. And so because of that, I asked the California Coastal Commission, wrote them a letter as a council member and as an individual, asking them if they could require Caltrans to provide $2 million to build a park here. This property was for sale. And the Coastal Commission agreed. They required a $1 million mitigation, and then they gave that to a state agency called the Coastal Conservancy, which in turn brought in another $2 million, $1.7 million of transportation enhancement funds, and constructed or gave the money to the city of Fort Bragg, which purchased the property and constructed this 25-acre park. It has, like I said, 1/2 mile of a 10-foot wide multi-use bike and pedestrian trail that runs west of the Noyo Bridge and covers these 25 acres. And it overlooks the Noyo Bay, which is where the fishing fleet comes in and out. And to the north, it looks to the core of the town, which is the former mill site. And I think it's a great example of what you can get, especially if you understand how government funding works. Because one of the things that I was noticing was the fact that Caltrans, because they were building a brand new bridge, they were able to get 88% of the bridge funding from the federal government. The federal government provides 88% of the funding anytime you build a new bridge or replace a bridge. And so they wanted to replace the bridge rather than rehab the old bridge. They would have had to have used entirely state funds to rehab the old bridge, and so there was actually less state dollars involved to build the new bridge, even with the $1 million mitigation, than they would have encountered had they rehabbed the old bridge.
We're in Fort Bragg, California, talking with Miles Everett, who's a member of the Community Development Advisory Board. What is the board?
Well, the board is appointed by the city council. There are 7 members. They're generally drawn from the area, not only within the city, but the people in the surrounding community who are served by city services. And we are really a sounding board and citizen panel to talk about possible different plans for making our community more developed as far as providing services to the community and making it pleasant for everyone.
What sort of issues typically come up in your discussions?
Well, we've been working on the downtown streetscape project for many years. That's part of it. We make recommendations to staff and city council about what kind of streetscape amenities would be appropriate for our community. We're asked to look at different plans for benches and trash cans and all of the things that you find on a city sidewalk. And that's part of it. Part of it is looking at how people move about in our community. We talk a little bit about parking. We talk a little bit about developing the alleys rather than the streets, so people will have places to walk. We talk a little bit about there was a great discussion for a long time about what kind of trees to plant on our downtown sidewalks. So these are all things that come up in meetings time and again. Our downtown streetscape project has been in the works since maybe 1985, when some student planners came up from Berkeley and looked at Fort Bragg and made a bunch of recommendations about how we could improve our community. And it has been talked about in charrettes and with the Community Development Advisory Board since then. And so, although the project is not going to be complete here in our downtown core until the year 2013, last summer we did all of the north-south streets in our community in the downtown district and improved the parking, improved the sidewalks, improved the citizen amenities like park benches, trash cans, and we have a much more pedestrian-friendly downtown than we did. All the sidewalks now are 11 feet. We have bulb outs where people can sit and not be in the way of pedestrians. It's been a wonderful project. It's been a great honor for me to be part of that process.
So after all these years, you finally got something down on the ground. How's it been working?
Well, I think it's been working great. Of course, there's and any time you're involved in city government, there's always various camps. You might notice near here that some of the drainage has been arranged, so the cars, if they want to come barreling down these streets, if they try to do it at more than about 25 miles an hour, they hit one of the swales where water is carried away during the wet season. And so it tends to slow them down. And some people have complained about that, but I think it's provided a great calming effect to traffic here in the downtown area. Because the sidewalks were widened from 8 to 11 feet, it took a few feet off both sides of the downtown roads, and although the speed limit here in the downtown area is still 25 miles an hour, there's a lot of people who used to exceed that speed limit on a regular basis, and now it's pretty much not the issue it once was, the barreling through the downtown district on people's way hither and yon. So that's one of the great advantages of the design, I think. There are other people who don't like having to slow down for the dips in the street.
So you can never make everybody happy.
No, you can't. And that's one of the reasons you have a community development advisory board, is to bring the community in, talk to them about what their needs and desires and wants are, and to try to make sure that everyone in the community has an opportunity to have part in the planning process and to help move it along. And we're always ready to listen to any ideas when it comes to even the rest of this project that's going to be happening between now and the year 2013.
And you mentioned trash cans, benches, street trees. How important is it to have amenities like that for a pedestrian environment?
Oh, I think it's wonderful because, of course, here in town, even street trees are a controversy. We're in a coastal environment. It's often cool and overcast. If there is sun, people want to cross the street to get into the sun. If we were to have street trees like many cities do with a canopy and lots of shade, it wouldn't be appropriate for us here at all, because we're always fighting that breeze that comes off the ocean. It rarely gets above 60. It's a wonderful day today with the sun shining. This is one of the warmest days that we've had that I can recall. So having trees may be a little bit of a controversy because there are some people who don't want shade, but we think it adds a lot to the look of the street.
So a lot of work going on here.
Well,
how does a town like Fort Bragg, pay for this kind of rejuvenation of your downtown?
Well, it's a kind of a misconception, really, for the downtown project at least. We had a lot of the streets here that were needing potholes fixed, and potholes are important. And there was a issue on the ballot to a temporary increase to the sales tax of 0.5%. This was to resurface the streets. About that same time, the downtown project really started going, and there's a lot of misconceptions about where the money comes from. In fact, almost none of the sales tax money is being applied to the downtown improvement project. The money comes, about 63% of it comes from the Mendocino Council of Governments. They are a conduit for state and federal funds for transportation and pedestrian improvements. There's some of it that comes from redevelopment agency funding that is part of the project. There's a tiny percent of it, like 2.3% of the entire $8.3 million project, that may have to come from that 0.5% sales tax, but that's only if only if things go over cost. So most people think that, we're paying all that sales tax in order to improve the downtown district, but really it's been a number of competitive grant situations where the city has gone out and applied for federal and state funds to help improve our downtown. A lot of the handicapped facilities, the improvements to bring it up to American with Disabilities Act standards at our intersection, has been paid for out of grants and not with that 0.5% sales tax. Almost none of that is being spent on this project.
Now that it's in place, people are able to walk around downtown, see it for themselves. Tourists will be coming into town using it. What's the general impression?
Well, I'd like to see a lot more amenities spring up beyond the ones that are being provided by the city. And we have a real project to encourage businesses to buy their own benches to put in front of their businesses if they so choose. And that's part of the project, we think, is to go and get a public-private partnership between the downtown merchants and us to make our downtown more comfortable for pedestrians. There's a lot of people who are excited about the first part of this project and are starting to get interested in what's going to happen in our community over the next 10 or 20 years. One of the things that's going to happen here is we've got a 400-acre mill site that used to be an industrial site, is now in the process of being cleaned up, and it's between our downtown area and the ocean. Some of the prime oceanfront property available on on the entire Pacific coast, one of the largest parcels in an urban setting. And so a lot of people are going to want to be involved in the process of specific planning for the downtown, bringing the downtown and integrating it with whatever happens on the Georgia Pacific Mill site now that it's been decommissioned and that it's going to become part of our, it already is part of our city, now that it's going to be zoned something other than forest processing industrial.
And is your board involved in the planning and the thinking about that as well?
Well, we really are kind of more involved in the redevelopment agency part of a specific piece of real estate, but citywide. And really the specific plan for the mill site is much bigger than our little board or even the city council or even Georgia Pacific. It has to be a cooperative process that happens with the citizens, the governments, the businesses, the Chamber of Commerce. There's all kinds of people who we want to have involved. And that's what's going to make a successful planning process, is getting people of all stripes to come to the table and talk about what they want in their community.
We're talking with Dave Turner, who's Vice Mayor of Fort Bragg. What's the huge redevelopment opportunity that Fort Bragg has at the moment?
If you look just behind me, it's right here. From where that lumber starts there, all the way down there, 430 acres of the 1/3 of the city of Fort Bragg, which is on the coast, is we're going to do something with it. It's been a mill site historically. It's why the town is here, because of the timber mill. But it closed 6 years ago, and we've got to do something with it, and we've got a lot of opportunities.
What sort of discussions is the public having about what they want to have happen?
We've had a number of discussions with the public and a visioning process, and people have come to meetings and sent in questionnaires. The number one, the very highest item on everybody's list is a trail all along the coast. So we want to be able to connect the trail coming from McCarricker, going all the way along the over 3 miles of frontage there along the ocean, all the way to the other bridge. So we want to just span the town along the ocean.
And then would you just have one route along the ocean, or would pedestrians and bicyclists have other ways through the site?
We've got some urban planning to do, but my vision, and I think it's shared by a number of people on the council, is where the trestle in the old Hall Road comes across. We want to have a boulevard of sorts for pedestrians and bikes to go directly downtown, so that, because we're only a block off the main street here, and that way it'll make it an efficient route for people that need to just go shopping, want to come in for a cup of coffee. But those that want to enjoy the views, they can take the little longer way and go out to the ocean, and they'll be able to connect and come downtown also, or continue south to Mendocino.
So after people express their desire for good ped bike path along the coast, what's next on their list? What are people talking about?
One of the highest, what we call the NOYO Center, a Marine Research Center, and we're working on that now. We're in our third phase of that. We had a feasibility study, and then we wrote up pretty much the blueprint of how to do it, and we're just about to start executing that and getting a research center. It'll be out on right along the trail, out on the southern part of the mill site, but it'll be a research center, marine research. It turns out, originally we wanted this, and some marine biologists came out and thought, well, you've got the Noyo River dumping in here in the ocean, and you've got your sewage plant pretty close here. You'll never have a marine research center. The water just isn't that kind of water. So we said, fine, we'll do they said, but you could do a study, an educational center, and we said, fine, let's do that. So we got onto our next phase, and the same researchers as they were helping us with that next phase, they discovered that there's 2 bays down there that are pristine. They've been behind a fence on the mill site for 100 years, and in their words, there's probably no more pristine inlets on the California coast, and these, and just by the nature of the currents of the river and the placement, they're beautiful for that. So we're back to Plan A, where we're going to have a research marine research center and educational. We're going to tie in from redwoods to coast and study the whole environment here. But it's going to be a great way to get kids involved and also help kids get into their livelihoods for some that are interested in that.
So as you've stopped to take inventory of the resources that are on this site, you've been getting some pleasant discoveries. It's not all just brownfield nasty stuff.
No, we're what we call the responsible party. Georgia Pacific is doing a cleanup. It's being supervised by the state, the Department of Toxic Substance Control, or what we call DTSC. They're making sure they do the right job. There's a lot of community input, and as always in this kind of thing, there's some tension when they find something that we wish wasn't there, but it needs to be dealt with appropriately, and we're going through that process. But as we go through that, it turns out that we're finding that mushrooms can bioremediate a lot of things that are out there, and perhaps even some of the worst things. Where Georgia Pacific is funding a study. Paul Stamets, who's done a lot of mushroom bioremediation and worked with them and with hydrocarbons and oil and water, and at the San Francisco Bay when they had the spill there, he helped with that. So he's doing a bench study here to see if we can take care of some of our worst contaminants, our dioxins. And there's coming together a lot of people that are interested in that, and we hope also to have a bioremediation center of sorts. It might be part of the NOYO Center, it may be a separate thing, but we hope to use this 430 acres to show this is the right way to clean up a place, and not just clean it up, button it up, and put something over the top of it, but make sure that we remember what was there, what happened there, how we cleaned it up, and how other communities can do the same.
Once it's all finally cleaned up and you're able to build there, are you just going to sort of clone your existing downtown, another copy of it, or what do you want to do?
The community, and this also came out of the meetings, as we had people from all walks of life, both sides of whatever fence you might imagine there at these meetings, and it looked like the consultants broke everybody up into 10 tables, and there were developers sitting next to environmentalists and people who don't get along sitting down, and they were given a map, and they were given some projections of, if you do this is what it'll do for housing, for your tax base, for all these parameters. And they said, plan out what you guys want. And so each table sat down and they started pushing stuff around, and we were informed by the two meetings before that and the community survey, which said that they wanted some housing, they wanted the downtown to expand a little bit, they wanted the trail, they wanted a park, and they wanted some light industrial, we're looking at a woodworking showcase, because we have a lot of extremely talented woodworkers that have come through the woodworking school that Krenoff started. But anyway, people sat down at these tables, and at the end of the meeting, each group put up their map, and 10 maps, maybe it was 9 maps, went up on the wall, and they were amazingly the same. This area here, this what we call the West neighborhood, because it's the only neighborhood west of the highway, west of Main Street. This neighborhood rolls out to the coast, so this becomes just more neighborhood. And then what's directly to the south of this neighborhood would be downtown, rolling out a little bit. We hope to have a performing arts theater there. Maybe if it makes sense for a higher-end hotel. We've got plenty of motel space, but maybe a higher-end hotel. Community's receptive to that. The NOYO Center, some light industrial, and then we've got a whole bunch left for just that who knows what, but we want to keep it open. We're not going to try to expand and absorb a whole bunch at once, just incrementally roll out a little bit of the town, and then perhaps it could be a think tank for a Hewlett-Packard or a Google. Maybe they'd want it. We would love to have a university here. The community college can expand with the NOYO Center. A lot of possibilities.
How many years do you project it'll take to actually absorb all this land? You say you're trying not to rush things too much. What's the projection?
I'm learning here because I'm a small businessman. I'm used to thinking this is a good idea and tomorrow we should be working on it. And I got involved in city government because of this project. I wanted to make sure it was done right, or at least have my input to see that we took things into consideration that I thought needed to be considered. And I've learned to realize there's a good reason things have to go a little slower. You have to inform people, they have to have a chance to respond. But when I first ran for election, I figured that in 5 years we'll be building some housing. Well, it's been 6 years now and we're not close. I now hope in 5 years we'll be building some housing. We're getting closer there, but this stuff takes time. You've got to listen to everybody. You've got to let people give you feedback. And it's not good to rush things when you're dealing with other people's lives. So city government, and I suppose for that point, we wish federal governments would work a little more responsive to the community.
Getting back to how we started talking about having walkable places with the trails, and in terms of the fabric of the new development, did people use the word walkable and pedestrian a lot when describing the space they wanted?
It's definite. This will be a walkable community. It already is. I mean, the city lies between two rivers here, and you can walk from one end to the other. 7,000 people live within this 3-mile stretch, and you can walk anywhere in town. I live, you can see back there, that greenhouse there. I walk to work, walk home for lunch, come back. It's beautiful. We're going to do more of that, and we're going to improve. Our sidewalks over the years have had poles stuck in the middle of them and things that people weren't really thinking about, that walkability thing as we zoomed around in cars for the last few decades. But we'll do this right. We won't put poles in the middle of sidewalks. One of the things I'd like to see is a tri-level development out here for folks that tri-level care, so that people that need assisted living or might need it could move here, that may live in a house that's bigger than they need, but they don't want to leave the community. But we want to make sure it's downtown where they can walk downtown while they're able to, or get help getting downtown. So we want to make that close. They're going to be close to the beach, close to the trestle and the walk that way. It's going to be an amazing place. It is an amazing place.
Visit us on the internet at www.pedestrians.org.